YouTube? This is Randy, and I'm bringing you this video because I recently leveled up in my gold org, and I wanted to talk about my experiences with it and what they bring to the table. And I also wanted to make it for those who are curious about Marksmanship Hunters, but don't have that much information about it, don't know what their game style is like, and seeing if maybe this sparks their interest of making one or not. So with that being said, let's do this. Let's start out with, what is a Marksmanship Hunter? A Marksmanship Hunter is a specialization of the Hunter class who specialize in long-range combat, who bring a huge amount of burst potential damage, excel at keeping enemies at bay, and have an impressive amount of utility or crowd control. Now that we know what a Marksmanship Hunter is, during this video we're going to talk about the mentality that you need to have to play as a Marksmanship Hunter, what you exceed at, what you kind of have disadvantages in, and one of the biggest questions is whether or not you need your pet. While leveling up your character, you're going to come to understand that there are 3 different aspects of the game that you can go through in order to gain experience. 1 is open world questing, 2 is dungeons, and 3 is PvP content. Now you can do what I did and do a mixture of all 3. I love PvP, I love doing dungeons, and to supplement those 2, I open world quests. I just do quests here and there, waiting for the queue to pop, or sometimes I just take a break from those and just completely quest for a while. But at the same time, if you just like one of those things, you have 100% of the choice to do that. You can just quest, or you can just do dungeons, or you can just do PvP. Just do what you feel that you want to do and have fun with it, alright? Let's start out with questing as a Marksmanship Hunter. And one of the first things you're going to notice is how hard your aim shot hits for. And it's going to become a normal occurrence seeing you bring down an enemy's health from 100% to 0% with one ability. Literally, like one ability. You cast your aim shot, boom, gone, dead. You're going to be like, holy shit. And you're going to love that. You're going to love seeing those huge numbers, obliterating things, taking chunks off of enemies' health. To add to that, you have access to a pet. So you can send your pet out and have it tank for you, so you can safely deal damage in the background and deal a lot of damage. And not having to worry about a lot of the mechanics or taking damage. As you start climbing these levels, you're going to gain access to very important abilities. And one of the bread and butter abilities that you're going to gain is misdirection. Now, what misdirection opens you up to is the ability to round up a group of mobs, and you can deal damage to them and bring them down and move on to the next. Instead of going from individual mob to the next individual mob, you can go from group to group to group, and that makes your questing a lot more easier, a lot more faster, and more efficient. And you still have your super high potential in burst. You're still gonna see huge amounts of numbers, and your pet is gonna help you out a lot. So in questing, I recommend having your pet out. Another thing that you excel at is doing group content, elites, rare elites, or rares. You're not gonna have any issues tackling any of these things, okay? So you don't have to worry about, oh, I need to get into a group, or damn, I'm taking too much damage, I won't be able to finish this, I cannot heal. You go in there, send your pet, and just kill them up and go on to the next. Let me tell you, not once did I die while questing. While doing my normal pick up quest here, kill these amount of enemies, kill this one special mob, kill this elite, whatever it was, I did not die. It was so easy, so efficient, and you'll see that you start getting experience so much faster. What's great about an MM Hunter is that you can scope out the area And if you need to work your way from one point to another, you can single out enemies in order to get there and not have to worry about body pulling or aggroing patrols or aggroing just people or enemies that are close by. And you can just dish out from afar. So that you can play a safe route. Also, you have access to your traps. So say you have 2 enemies and you know that one hits very hard and you can only deal with one, you can trap one and then focus on that enemy. One of my favorite things about a Marksmanship Hunter is the ease that you have to leave combat. Alright, so if there's a difficult situation or an emergency, you can just drop out of combat with feign death. And as you gain more levels, you're gonna get access to camouflage. And feign death paired with camouflage is so good. You're gonna be able to feign death straight into a camouflage, and you can sneak your way out, or you can even mount and either fly away or just run away. Super cool to have that. You're gonna notice how straightforward things become. You're gonna be less scared to tackle on more difficult things because you have that ease of just getting out of the situation. Super easy questing as a hunter. I never had a problem. I never died while questing. The only thing I died off was maybe falling off a cliff or getting ganked by a player. To sum it all up, from a questing perspective, as a Marksmanship Hunter, you bring a lot of damage in a short amount of time. So you're moving from quest area to quest area much faster, and you're gaining that experience much faster. You can deal with harder content by yourself with minimal risk. You're able to come into an area or situation with a strategic mind because of your abilities and the way your spec works. And finally, you are able to leave combat on the drop of a dime. You can escape much more easier, much more frequent than other specs. With that said, let's move on to dungeons. Now, dungeons are pretty interesting. They take a lot more spatial and situational awareness than questing. You get to learn your rotation at a fuller capacity. You begin to see what is your spec's strengths and its disadvantages. But you do bring a lot to the group play with your utility and your emergency buttons that you have to save the day. When it comes to damage in a dungeon, you really thought you had a lot of high bursts out there while questing? You're gonna really find out what burst damage is in dungeons, okay? For a very long time while leveling up, you will have the highest burst damage of all classes. All right? Maybe not the sustained, maybe not the greatest in AoE, but your damage output is massive, especially on your first initial hit. Anything above 80%, okay, sustained damage, and you're gonna end strong. To help you visualize this, let's get into the example of a single target situation. Your aim shot has a perk that it deals 50% bonus damage to a target that you have not damaged yet, right? Then you have careful aim that gives your aim shot a 50% chance of giving you 100% bonus damage to that aim shot. So the number is ludicrous. To take advantage of these things, you're gonna want to always start off with an aim shot, and then you're gonna want to use as many aim shots as you can when they're above 80% health. And then once they go below 80% and above 20%, you're just gonna do your regular rotation, which is aim shot, rapid fire on cooldown, stay shot, etc., etc. But as you get closer to that 20% health, you're gonna want to have your charges get as max as possible, but not have 2 charges. So you're gonna want to be at 1 charge in like 3 seconds to get to your next charge. What this does is, once you reach that 20%, you're able to cast an aim shot, and then your other aim shot is ready to go, so you can cast it when you're ready. This way, you'll have enough aim shots to fit into those 2 windows, which is above 80 and below 20%. You'll see a huge difference if you play this way while doing dungeons or single target. And this can go up to all the way even in raids or whatever situations. Now when it comes to AoE, you're gonna see that Marksmanship feels good when there are between 3 to 6 targets. The reason I say that is the way your class works is your multi-shot gives your aim shot and rapid fire the ability to ricochet off of targets. Your aim shot will ricochet up to 5 additional targets, and your rapid fire will ricochet up to 2 more targets. If you find yourself grouping up with a tank who likes to do massive pulls, that's where Marksmanship tends to suffer a little bit, because our main source of damage aren't able to keep up with it. Luckily, we are able to talent to these type of situations, but we won't be able to do crazy numbers. Okay, you can spec into explosive shot and into barrage, and it'll help out your rotation when dealing with a huge amount of enemies. There are a lot of perks that you bring as a Marksmanship Hunter to your group. One of your bread and butter moves is going to be misdirection. With misdirection, you're able to help the tank gain aggro on patrols, on a boss, on incoming adds while doing a boss fight, or unsuspecting patrols that he is not aware of. So if they get pulled by a different player, you're able to help them gain that aggro and keep the situation under control. When it comes to crowd control, you're not going to find yourself preemptively using it in order to fight a pack. You're mostly going to use it for ads that are being aggroed by the group or unsuspecting pats. So it's more of an emergency button for dungeons as you level. You may also find yourself in situations where your tank won't be able to take on more enemies. So you can take your pet out and misdirect those enemies to your pet and give your tank a couple seconds to get himself in order or get himself ready for with his defensives and take on the enemies, or give your group enough time to kill the first pack and then get on to the next one. Speaking of pets, dungeons is a place where you don't need to have your pet on. Only in extremely specific and rare emerging situations you will need your pet out, and that is if your tank died and you want your group to live. So it's like an emergency button. And lastly, and this is more relating to Marksmanship Hunters who are engineers like myself, you're able to detect an imminent wipe, feign death, and when everything resets, you can stand up and possibly res another player. So that's pretty cool. I like that about engineering. And you can make your own bows and etc. etc. So that's another time. So to sum up, going through a dungeon as an MM Hunter, you have high burst on trash because everything dies so quick. Your burst is super high on bosses from the beginning, and it'll continue on towards the end, which is ultra sexy, and you still see huge ass numbers, especially when you put in trinkets and cooldowns, etc. etc. You have emergency buttons for those situations where, oh, you need that mob controlled, freezing trap. You need to, we just aggroed a bunch of mobs, misdirect to your tank. And lastly, you can save a shit ton of money on repair costs. because you're able to feign death and drop out of combat. So that's what you bring for dungeons. With that said, let's head on to PvP. Now, PvP is probably the main reason I play this game. I really enjoy that mentality of player versus player and that chess game, etc., etc. With that being said, Marksmanship Hunter has gone down in popularity in BFA for PvP. And the reason being is your hardest hitting ability is tied to a long cast time, and you are immobile, okay? So your kill potential dropped. The amount of time you spend standing in place has gone up, and your rotation has been simplified. But you still have a great amount of utility. The mentality that you bring to PvP is not, oh, I'm gonna do as much damage as I can. No, the mentality is you take control of the situation and you kill when you have the opportunity to. The things that you bring as a Marksmanship Hunter to a PvP situation are you have a lot of power, and with this power you're able to make other players blow their cooldowns because, oh, I'm getting hurt badly, so I gotta do things in order to survive. You can scare other players away because they don't have their cooldowns, or they feel like you're a powerhouse and you bring too much. If you play it right, you have an enormous amount of utility. Okay, and I have a list here, so I'm gonna go through with them. So let's do this. All right. So we have 2 knockbacks. We got high explosive shot, and we have bursting shot. You have 3 snares. Okay, you have your concussive shot. If you include your bursting shot snare, that's a snare, and you also have your tart trap. And we have a 4th if you bring a pet that brings a slow. So that's a lot, right? And that's just that you can just have. You have 2 incapacitates, scatter shot, and you have freezing trap. You have 2 mortar wounds. You have viper sting, and you have a default buff that your pet brings. You have roar sacrifice and scorpion sting, so that reduces the critical strike chance of an enemy player, so they can't critical strike at all. You have a freedom with your pet, and you can talent into a root, which is a binding shot. So again, you have an enormous amount of utility, and a lot of it you don't need a spec for. You can, and then everything else comes with it. Like, it just comes with it. You just have it. Not a lot of classes have this amount of utility, and I've heard of classes that lost an enormous amount or a lot because they felt that they had too much. Even though Marksmanship Hunter has a lot, like, it's just too much. With that being said, your amount of power and the utility you bring, you have more than enough to control the entire playfield. On top of that, because of your camouflage and your traps and your snares, you're a great flag defender, flag carrier defender, and a base defender. You're able to sit there and wait until people are coming in and just do what you need to do to keep them at bay as much as possible while dealing damage. Now, people say that Marksmanship Hunter are immobile, and to an extent that's the truth. But in the reality of the situation is, every single move that you have at your disposal, you can cast while moving. every single move, except for 2, and 1 is if you talent for it. Okay, so aim shot is like 2.5 seconds reduced by haste, and second is sniper shot, and you have to talent for that. And right now that is not a meta. You can play with it in epic battlegrounds or battlegrounds, but I don't suggest it right now. Maybe in 8.1. But with that being said, you can still dish out a lot of damage. A move that is underused right now is rapid fire. After you're able to get lethal shots, that talent, which makes your steady shot able to make your next aim shot a guaranteed critical strike. Now what you see people doing is they continue using steady shot to get that proc when a player is at a lower amount of health. And what that happens when you start doing that, your pressure diminishes and they're able to recover from it. But with rapid fire, you can use it and it does 2 jobs. It continues giving you focus, because that's one of the reasons you're going to use a steady shot. And 2, it does a good amount of damage to continue on that pressure that you're bringing. So I feel like that's an underused ability right now, but I guess everybody is still learning how to play the class and they don't see that opportunity. And reason being is that lethal shots does make aim shot pretty attractive, but there's been many times where I'm using a steady shot, I'm trying to get my proc up, and they recover, and by the time I cast all those steady shots, get the proc, and then cast that long aim shot, I won't have any kills. Like this nothing just happened. I literally just gave him another opportunity. So that's how I feel about rapid fire. And when it comes to pets, at the end of the day, the more you PvP, the more you're gonna realize that your pet brings something that you lack. Okay? It continues doing damage on the player. It gives you access to 2 very important cooldowns, which is Roar of Sacrifice, which you have to talent for in the PvP tree. And when you go with a Cunning Pet, you have a freedom. So you can give yourself or another player freedom and immunity to any type of snare or movement impairing effect by 4 seconds or something like that, which is extremely useful. So I like to play where I start out by myself, as you know, with no pet, deal an absurd amount of damage. But when the need for my pet arrives, I just call him out. And another reason to have your pet out is your pet does bring the mortal wounds debuff, and you can continue to have it on your kill target while you control your healer. And by the time your healer does get the chance to heal that target, he will do a reduced amount of healing. So that really helps out. So in casual PvP, and when you know your opponent is not that skilled, definitely you're able to play without a pet. But the higher you go in rating, once you get to 120, or the more you play, the more you realize that your pet is detrimental for playing as a Marksmanship Hunter in PvP. So to sum it all up, as a Marksmanship Hunter in a PvP environment, you bring massive amounts of pressure, you bring an enormous amount of utility, and you're able to be a great defender of whatever it is. It's so cool that you're able, when you're in a base that you're able to track your enemies. You can track humanoids, track beasts, and track hidden, so you can see stealth or invisible players at a slightly farther distance than if you didn't have it. So telling you, it's pretty awesome. So with all this, I hope this brought to you information that you needed to see if you wanted to make a Marksmanship Hunter. It has a high learning curve. You need to have a good amount of awareness. You need to understand your abilities. It's not just like a regular rotation. You have to pay attention to a lot of things going on. You have to understand a lot of your utility. And at the end of the day, it's a fun spec. It's very calm. It's you're not constantly just pressing buttons over and over again. It's a thinking class. That's how I guess I can put it. So if you guys like this video, give it a like. If you dislike it, please do, and then leave a comment telling me why is it that you dislike it. It'll kind of help me out in what it is I should improve on. And if you want to open discussion, ask a question or bring something up so we can discuss it, and maybe you guys see something that I didn't. So I hope you guys like this, and I'll see you guys out there on the next one.